One shortcut, taken 8 weeks before this flight, by a maintenance crew trying to save a little time, and on the afternoon of May 25, 1979, that shortcut killed 273 people in 31 seconds. American Airlines Flight 191 remains, to this day, the deadliest aviation accident in the history of the United States. And what makes this story so haunting is that the pilots did everything right. They followed their training perfectly. They made no mistakes, and it still wasn't enough, because the plane had already been condemned weeks before it ever left the ground. Stay with me, because the chain of events that led to this disaster is one of the most chilling in aviation history. It is Memorial Day weekend, 1979. America is heading into a long holiday. Chicago's O'Hare International Airport is one of the busiest in the world, and today it is buzzing. Families heading west for the holiday, business travelers, students returning to California. The terminal is full of people with somewhere to be. American Airlines Flight 191 is a scheduled service from Chicago O'Hare to Los Angeles International Airport. A direct coast-to-coast flight, roughly 4 hours in the air. It is a route the airline flies constantly. Nothing about the day's schedule raises any concern. The aircraft assigned to this flight is a McDonnell Douglas DC-10. Now, some of you may not be familiar with the DC-10. It is a wide-body jet, wide enough to have 2 aisles inside, with 3 engines, 2 engines mounted under the wings and 1 in the tail. When it entered service in 1971, it was considered a modern, capable aircraft. Airlines around the world flew it. Passengers flew on it every day. This particular DC-10, registered as 1110AA, had been delivered to American Airlines back in 1972. It was 7 years old, experienced but not old by aviation standards. It had passed its most recent scheduled maintenance check. On paper, everything was in order. At the gate, 258 passengers settle into their seats. 13 crew members take their positions. Captain Walter Lux is in command. He's one of the most experienced pilots at American Airlines. More than 22,000 flight hours. His first officer, James Dillard, is equally qualified and well-trained. These are not young, inexperienced aviators. These are career professionals who know this aircraft and this route. The passengers do not know their names, but their lives are in these 2 men's hands, and those men are ready. But there is one thing Captain Lux and his crew cannot know. There is one thing no pilot on Earth could have known from the cockpit that afternoon. Hidden inside the left engine's mounting structure, invisible to the eye, is a crack that has been growing for 8 weeks, getting longer with every single flight, and today it will finally give way. Let me explain how an aircraft engine attaches to the wing. On a jet like the DC-10, the engines hang from the wings via a structure called a pylon. Think of the pylon as a heavy-duty bracket. It connects the engine, which weighs several tons and operates at enormous power, to the wing of the aircraft. The pylon must be strong enough to hold the engine in place during takeoff, cruise, and landing. During normal engine changes and maintenance, removing and reinstalling an engine and its pylon is a complex, time-consuming process. The manufacturer's official procedure requires specific equipment, a cradle designed precisely for this job, to safely support the engine and pylon assembly during removal. This procedure takes time, and time in an airline maintenance environment costs money. 2 months before this flight, American Airlines maintenance crews were performing routine engine maintenance on this DC-10, and they decided to take a shortcut. Instead of using the manufacturer's recommended cradle, they used a forklift, a standard warehouse forklift. They used it to support and move the engine and pylon assembly as one combined unit, saving time by not having to separate them. The procedure had been used before. It had worked before. Nobody thought it would cause a problem. But here is what happened. During the process, the forklift's hydraulic pressure dropped slightly during a shift change. The load shifted. The pylon was bumped against the wing attachment point. There was no obvious damage visible to the workers. There was no alarm, no warning light. Nobody stopped what they were doing. The maintenance was completed. The engine and pylon were reinstalled. The aircraft was returned to service. But inside the rear attachment fitting of that pylon, invisible to the naked eye, was a crack. It was microscopic. You would not have seen it even if you were looking. The standard inspection techniques used at the time were not designed to detect a crack this small in this location. Over the following 8 weeks, this plane flew hundreds of times. Every single takeoff, every landing, every pressurization cycle. The stress of normal flight made that crack grow, slowly, steadily, silently. On May 25, 1979, as American Airlines Flight 191 began its takeoff roll down runway 32, right at O'Hare, the crack reached its limit. The metal could hold no longer. At 3:02 in the afternoon, the aircraft begins accelerating down the runway. Everything appears normal. The 3 engines are at full takeoff power. The speed is building, and then, at approximately 6,000 feet down the runway, the pylon fails. The entire left engine, thousands of pounds of jet engine at full thrust, tears free from the wing. The force of the air catches it. The engine flips up and over the top of the left wing and comes crashing down onto the runway behind the aircraft. A controller in the tower watches it happen. He sees a white vapor trailing from the wing. He sees parts raining down. But inside the cockpit, Captain Lux and First Officer Dillard do not see this. The cockpit of a DC-10 sits at the very front of the aircraft. The wings extend far behind and below. The pilots cannot see the left engine from where they sit. What they feel is a sudden loss of power on the left side. What their instruments tell them is engine failure on engine number 1. This is an emergency, but not an unmanageable one. A DC-10 can fly on 2 engines. The crew has trained for exactly this scenario. They know what to do. At takeoff speed, aborting, stopping the aircraft on the runway, is no longer safe. The aircraft is moving too fast. There is not enough runway left. The correct procedure is to continue the takeoff, climb to a safe altitude, and return to the airport. So Captain Lux does exactly that. He pulls back. The aircraft lifts off the runway. The crew begins following their emergency engine failure checklist. And here is where this story becomes truly devastating. Because at the same moment the engine tore away from the wing, it did something else, something the pilots could not feel, something their instruments could not tell them, something that sealed the fate of everyone on board. The detaching engine sliced through the hydraulic lines running through the left wing. Now, the leading edge slats on the left wing need to be explained here. Slats are movable panels on the front edge of a wing. When extended, like during takeoff, they increase the wing's ability to generate lift, which allows the aircraft to fly more slowly without stalling. A stall is when the wing loses enough airflow to keep flying. When you stall, you stop producing lift and the aircraft begins to fall. On most aircraft at the time, the slats were held in position by mechanical locks. Even if hydraulic pressure was lost, the slats would stay in place. But the DC-10 was different. The DC-10's slats were held extended purely by hydraulic pressure, no lock. When the severed hydraulic lines drained, the slats on the left wing retracted. The left wing was now producing dramatically less lift than the right wing. The aircraft began to roll to the left. And still, the pilots did not know, because the instrument that would have told them, the slat disagreement warning, was powered by the left engine's electrical system, which had just been destroyed. The warning was silent. The cockpit warning light did not illuminate. There was another critical system that had also gone dark. The stick shaker. A stick shaker is a device that physically vibrates the pilot's control column, the stick, to warn them that the aircraft is approaching a stall. It is one of the most important warnings in the cockpit. But on this DC-10, the captain's stick shaker was powered by the left engine's electrical bus, and it was now dead. The first officer's controls did not include a stick shaker at all. American Airlines had chosen not to purchase that option. So there was no vibration, no alarm, no signal. The crew were flying blind into a stall they could not see. Captain Lux, following his training for an engine-out emergency, reduced the aircraft's speed. This was exactly the right thing to do if the slats were extended, but because the slats had retracted, the left wing was now flying far below its stall speed. The left wing had effectively stopped flying. The right wing, its engine still roaring, its slats still extended, kept generating full lift. The imbalance was catastrophic. The aircraft began to roll to the left, slowly at first, then faster. The nose dropped, the roll increased. The DC-10 reached a bank angle of 112 degrees. That means the aircraft was past vertical, beginning to point upside down. From an altitude of just 325 feet above the ground, barely higher than a 30-story building, there was no way back. 31 seconds after the engine separated, American Airlines Flight 191 struck the ground. It hit an open field just past the end of the runway, near a trailer park in the suburb of Des Plaines, just north of the airport. The impact was total. The aircraft was destroyed instantly in an enormous fireball. Pieces of the DC-10 scattered into the surrounding area, destroying a hangar, several cars, and a mobile home. All 271 people on board were killed. 2 people on the ground were also killed. 273 lives lost in less than a minute. And not one of those people had any idea when they boarded that afternoon that the plane they were walking onto had been carrying a hidden death sentence for 2 months. The investigation that followed was one of the most thorough in American aviation history. The National Transportation Safety Board, the NTSB, the government agency that investigates aviation accidents, assembled a massive team. They examined the wreckage. They recovered the black boxes, the flight data recorder, and the cockpit voice recorder. They interviewed maintenance workers. They reviewed paperwork. And what they found was a failure that ran through multiple layers of the aviation system. Investigators discovered the maintenance shortcut.